the unique and from plastic, and then recovery of into the plastic pellet, and then they utilize into the ammonia production for using this pellet, and then they will extrude the hydrogen and transportation by pipeline to the city, like Kawasaki. I'm not so familiar with technical background, so I think this is the very technical characteristic by Showa. Okay, next. Yeah, this is also the characteristic of the flow chart of this project. This is a used plastic recycling process, and plastic pellet, and then crushing, forming equipment, and then they are using metal. Anyway, mainly divided into three portions: crushing, forming, and gasification facility, and ammonia production facility. And then hydrogen will be produced during the process of ammonia production, as you can see in this top diagram. This is also quite new and unique, characteristic of the producing hydrogen from used plastic. Okay, so the final item, number 4, is Shunan City. Low-cost production and regional cooperation utilizing unused high-purity byproduct hydrogen from caustic soda. And participating organization is Shunan City and Shimonoseki City Tokuyama Company. This Tokuyama company is the producer of the caustic soda, and also Iwatani. And this is 5 years project, and production of hydrogen was utilized unused hydrogen byproducts and generated into electric plants, and then storage will be liquid hydrogen and also gaseous hydrogen, and usage will be FCB and FC buses, FC sanitary truck, FC forklift, and 100 kilowatt station on fuel cell, fish market, port facility, something like that. So this is the flow chart also. This is the flow diagram of this project. So Shunan City is the quite complex of the industrial factory, and they have a factory, as I said, the caustic soda factory by Tokuyama company, and then they have byproducts of the hydrogen that is caustic from caustic soda factory, and then they can into the liquid hydrogen and gaseous hydrogen, and then they store and transport by cargo hydrogen tank and stored in the liquid hydrogen tank, and by liquid hydrogen lorry they will transport to the vicinity city like Shimonoseki City, and they will supply the hydrogen, pure hydrogen, fuel cell bus or FCV, just like that. So this is so-called flow chart of the unused high purity byproduct hydrogen from caustic soda. So So this is so-called the Shunan city's explanation, and the center of this diagram in Japanese character is company of Tokuyama caustic soda factory, and the nearby Tokuyama factory they have many industrial company like this is all in Japanese, but Teijin. So they can distribute these, hydrogen out of, caustic soda will be delivered to this industrial company. So that's all my explanation for the major, hydrogen project. And number 5 is just for your reference. And I don't explain it in detail. And so this strategic roadmap for hydrogen in Japan, I think this will be explained by another Japanese, Mr. Hashimoto-san. So I don't explain in detail, but okay. So and also this is Japan's, basic hydrogen strategy. As you can see, the lower portion, hydrogen station now is 100, and by 2020, 160, and by 2030, some 900. This is target. And FCV is now 25,000, by 2020 to 40,000, and 2030 target was 800,000. And also FC buses, 1,200. By 2030, and forklift 10,000 by 2030. That's all. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
예, 감사합니다. 시간을 잘 지켜주셔서 아주 고맙다는 말씀을 드리고요. 대충 다 들으셨겠지만 일본의 4가지의 수소의 생산과 그 다음에 사용 사례를 얘기해 주셨는데요. 첫 번째가 보면 가축 분뇨로부터 수소를 생산해서 사용하는 것, 그 다음에 두 번째는 재생에너지 가지고 포클리프트에 수소를 사용하는 것, 세 번째는 폐 플라스틱 가지고 수소를 만들어내는 것, 그 다음에 네 번째는 고생수소에 대한 그런 얘기를 했고요. 그래서 구체적으로 두 번째 같은 경우는 포클리프트에 수소 재생 에너지로 만든 수소로 포클리프트를 사용하는 그런 사례를 보고 있는데, 이게 자동차 산업하고 아주 비슷하죠. 그 자동차를 굴리는데 포클리프트를 굴리는데 초기에는 휘발유나 디젤로 하다가 이게 공장에서 매연이 많이 발생하니까 지금은 배터리로 사용하는데요. 마치 전기 자동차처럼. 근데 배터리의 용량이 금방 유스업되기 때문에 이거를 빨리 리차지를 해야만 되든지 아니면 배터리를 교환해야만 되는 그런 문제가 있는데, 실제로 그 포클리프트를 운영하는 분들 얘기를 들어보니까 배터리를 리프레시하는 새 걸로 바꾸는 비용이 굉장히 많이 든다, 그런 얘기죠. 그래서 그거를 수소 연료전지를 하면 어차피 에너지가 생기면서 그런 문제를 해결할 수 있기 때문에 그런 것을 활용한다. 아마 두산에서도 이 비슷한 거를 스마트폰 기지국에 항상 다 갖다 놓는데, 그게 쓰지도 않았는데 몇 년 되면 완전히 차지 아웃 돼가지고 그거를 수소 연료전지로 개체하는 그런 연구가 하면서 굉장히 많은 것들이 얘기되고 있고요. 그 다음에 나중에 보면 여기에 일본의 수소 정책이라고 해서 2040년까지 자세하게 나와 있는데요. 보면 전기 자동차, 전기 트럭, 그 다음에 포클리프트를 몇 대씩 어떻게 하겠다, 코스트라는 것들을 굉장히 자세히 나와 있어가지고 우리나라도 이런 어떤 2030년, 40년을 내다보는 종합적인 수소 정책이 필요한 게 아닌가 하는 그런 생각을 가게 됩니다. 발표해주신 우리 미야시다 부모님께 다시 한번 박수를 보내드리겠습니다. 원래 우리가 시간이 25분이 늦게 시작해가지고 12시 반까지 끝내기가 조금 어려울 것 같은데요. 두 번째로 한국의 문제를 우리 안 박사님을 모시고 말씀 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 안구경 박사님은 한국 수소 및 신에너지 학회 회장을 맡고 계시고요. 그 다음에 한국기계연구원에서 연구위원도 특별히 신재생 에너지에 대한 연구를 오랫동안 해오신 한국의 전문가입니다. 가능하면 1분보다도 짧게.
예, 반갑습니다. 저는 한국수소및신의학회 회장을 맡고 있는 한국기계연구원의 안구경입니다. 저는 30분인 줄 알고 30분을 준비했는데 20분 정도 살아가서 하여간에 제가 최대한 빨리 해보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 제3회 수소에너지 국제포럼을 이곳 롯데 비올리에서 하게 됨을 축하드리고요. 또 여기서 이렇게 초청 강연을 하게 되어서 개인적으로 영광이고 더 감사를 드립니다. 오늘 제가 드릴 말씀은요, 국내 에너지 전환 정책 및 수소에너지 역할인데요. 에너지 전환이라는 말이 요즘에 굉장히 많이 나오는데, 에너지 전환, 에너지 믹스, 에너지 전환이 뭐고 그게 왜 수소에너지랑 관련이 있는지 그걸 좀 살펴보고요. 그 다음에 그 수소 전환을 위한 몇 가지 이제 전 세계적으로 하이드로젠 카운슬이라든가 또는 이제 국내에는 이제 수소융합 얼라이언스가 발족을 해서 많은 자유들을 주고 있는데, 그걸 보면서 국내의 수소 경제는 어떤 기상을
Looking at the activities that they were doing, I came up with some ideas for Korea, so I will be covering them as well. If we talk about energy transition, there are two pillars, which is the CO2 problem, which I'm sure all of you are well aware of, and climate change. In order to solve that, we need to improve energy efficiency, and renewable energy is considered the most important element. And the other thing is our transition to a nuclear-free, nuclear and coal-free society by adopting renewables. So there's a CO2 problem and the renewable energy issue, the increase of the share of renewable energy. These are the two characteristics of energy transition. So the current energy transition policies are investment into nuclear-free and coal-free technologies and to cut down on particulate matter emissions by 30% and to raise up the share of renewable energy to 20% by 2030. And the 8th basic plan is different from the 7th basic plan in that it focuses on eco-friendliness and safety as opposed to stability and affordability, which were the focuses of the 7th plan. This is a general plan laid out by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, and the major focus is on safety and eco-friendliness. So that is the general direction of the government, and we're trying to detach ourselves move away from nuclear power. So if we are trying to shift the paradigm to renewable energy, what's the difference here? Is first of all highlighted by the smart energy system based on renewable energy, and the previous speaker mentioned that the biggest problem with renewable energy or solar power is the fact that the generation can only be made intermittently because the sun is only in the sky for some time. So there's a mismatch between supply and demand, and in order to resolve this mismatch, if there is an electricity shortfall, we have to run gas turbines or find some way to provide power supply during the peak time. And for instance, in Europe, in Germany or France, they have one single grid. So they're distributing the demand, and if demand is distributed, if France has more than enough energy, Italy can draw the energy and use it. And the other element is demand control. For instance, by using a smart grid, we can control demand in a smart manner. And the second way is to, if there's oversupply, you take that surplus electricity and store it. And the Vice President mentioned earlier that the battery is insufficient in order to do that, in order to store the energy for a longer period of time. That's why we are in need of hydrogen energy use. That is the solution that we came up with in order to facilitate the transition to an eco-friendly energy society.
기존에
So
화석연료 쓰는 것도 전기를 쓰고 재생에너지 전기도 쓰고 또 그
previously generated from fossil
저장해
fuel, but
놨다가
now
스스로
we
쓰는
generate from
전기기도
partially
하고
from renewable
하이드로젠
energy,
두 개가
and we
같이
should be able
돌아가는 그런
to
사회가
establish a conversion system between electricity
그래서
grid
이제
and the
지금 다시
hydrogen grid.
돌아와서 수소에너지 에너지
So let's go
전환의
back to
답지
hydrogen
하나의
energy,
수소에너지 좀
which
말씀을
is a
드리면
solution that we have
이
found to enable this
연료의
energy paradigm
발전상하고
shift. If we
우리가
look at the
산업혁명이나
history of
전기혁명이나
fuel
자동차혁명이나
for the Industrial
정비혁명하고
Revolution, the Second
그
Industrial
가는
Revolution,
길이가
Third
비슷합니다.
Industrial Revolution,
그래서 이제
and the Information Revolution,
맨
the main
왼쪽에는
source
이제
of
나무
energy
같은 경우는
has
심한 게
differed.
있다가 점점
So,
시가 줄다가 이제 향후에는 이와
For
같이 이제 수소
instance, we have started off from
레볼루션이
wood,
일어난다는
which
것이
then
이제
moved to
많은
coal,
사람들이
oil, natural
생각해요.
gas, and
특히
the next
수소의 역할은
major energy source will be
에너지에 있어서 전
hydrogen, which
세계적으로
that is the
생긴
anticipation
트렌드가 있는데
of
아까
most of the
말씀드렸던
people. And
이제
the
기후변화
global
문제,
trends or
또
challenges that
하나는
we are facing,
이
such as climate
대형에서
change
수동으로 가는 중산형의 문제,
the
또 하나는 이제
distribution
스마트
or
그리드
the
문제들이
the
있는데
distribution grid from
그런
being
것들을
large scale
해결할
to
수 있는
small scale,
중심에 이제 수소가
and
있다고
the
생각하시면 될 것 같습니다.
smart
특히
grid.
우리나라의
These are also
국내 에너지 산업
some
변화
elements that
이슈를
will
보면
be
보통 이렇게
that will find hydrogen very helpful.
여기서 파리
So,
협약이나 미세먼지나
We have
원전
to keep in
안정성이나
mind the Paris
수산이나
Climate Agreement and fine particulate matter and the safety of nuclear power plants, and hydrogen can be the answer to all of these problems. That's why the Korean government is trying to draft policies with hydrogen energy as the focus.
정의가 있는데요.
There
수소에너지는
are
가장
many
큰 것은
characteristics of
우리가 이제
hydrogen.
수소를 만들면
And one is that if we produce and store and use hydrogen, we produce water, and then we can create hydrogen out of that water, and then store that again. So there is a virtuous cycle here. So hydrogen is an energy carrier, but the fact of the matter is the flammable range is very wide, which is why it could be dangerous, because if we are not discreet enough, it will catch fire. But the other fact is it's very light. So in the case of vehicles, if they use hydrogen energy, it will be much more. It could be safer even compared to a gasoline car. These are major milestones in the history of fuel cells. So in 1973 and 79, there were two oil crises. And at that time, back then, people raised up the issue of the importance of hydrogen, which unfortunately fell through though. And then our Korea Hydrogen and New Energy Society was established in 1989 here, highlighted in blue, and there were many hydrogen-related centers established, and then the Hydrogen Convergence Alliance was launched last year in 2017. They have conducted many hydrogen-related projects, and you can see here that the Ministry of ICT is also pushed forward with many projects. It has been conducting a 21st Century Frontier project for 10 years, since 2003 to 2013. And in August 13th, our Vice Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister of Economy, has made sure that the hydrogen economy is selected as the third major strategic investment destination. There is AI along with hydrogen on that list, and the Ministry of ICT is trying to come up with a roadmap to this end by the end of this year. And hydrogen energy, it was the talk of the town around a decade ago. So I hope this time all the heat and the enthusiasm doesn't subside, and we can take this to another level and advance it even more. And in October, there was a exhibition centered on hydrogen as well, which brought about public attention on hydrogen energy. So the features of hydrogen energy is that it cannot be depleted. It is an unlimited source. It is a zero emission clean energy, and it is also a very equal energy, because unlike fuel, which is only produced in certain regions, hydrogen can be made out of water. And there are points about electricity storage and some hydrogen policies in major advanced economies, so I will just talk about that. I'll skip this part because it was mentioned earlier, but my point is here that there's a mismatch between supply and demand, so we need to store electricity in order to use them when they are actually needed. And out of the many options that we have, hydrogen is the most promising because it enables large-scale, long-term storage. So take, for instance, the example of the surplus electricity created from renewable energy, and if there's water recycled from other elements, we use the water and electricity to create hydrogen, and we store it to be used in peak times. And in regions where solar power or wind power is impossible, we can use hydrogen to create electricity and heat to transport to eco-villages or industrial complexes. This is a typical snapshot of a hydrogen economy. And in the case of Europe, I saw that the national assemblies or congresses, they selected 10 best technologies that will transform our future, which includes autonomous vehicles, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, drones. And number 10 actually is hydrogen and electricity storage. So this points to the fact that European countries are focusing on R&D for hydrogen storage technologies. And another thing that I would like to mention is that in the case of Korea, hydrogen can become a new growth momentum. So it matters. We should keenly focus on who preempts the market by taking the initiative. Especially, the problem is more imminent for Korea because our potential growth rate is on the decline. I believe hydrogen is a very appropriate future growth engine. If you see here on the lower right-hand side, McKinsey came up with a 2050 Hydrogen Society initiative. The size of the market will be $2.5 trillion. According to their estimate, it will create around 30 million new jobs. That's why we should transition to a hydrogen society as fast as possible. Well, in the case of Japan, I'm sure the Japanese speaker will illustrate later, but Japan has selected the realization of a hydrogen society as one of the basic plans of the nation. So I think Japan is the leading country at the moment in the hydrogen industry. And well, Germany is also another prominent player. They are preparing for a transition to a hydrogen energy. They are cutting down on nuclear power generation, and then they face the problem of increased CO2 emissions because of fossil fuel power plants. That's why they are trying to increase the usage of hydrogen. And then they have successfully raised the share of renewable energy from 30% in 2016 to around 35% currently. And this slide I inserted because in last year I went to a small town named Davos in Switzerland, and there was a hydrogen council held in Davos, and 13 companies participated in the event. And I saw the literature several weeks ago, and more than 53 companies are participating in the Hydrogen Council now, which is a big improvement. And the general precondition is, well, the principle is that we need to shift from fossil fuel to hydrogen. And no matter how hard we try, the population and the GDP will increase, which is why energy demand will inevitably increase. So we need more hydrogen, because renewable energy use will also rise. And everyone has agreed on this future that we will be facing. So I inserted this picture, and I was trying to talk mostly about Korea today, but this chart can be applied to most of the countries, including European countries. We have to produce hydrogen, store it, and then deliver it to the consumers. This general logic applies for every country, but as everyone mentioned, there is a mismatch in supply and demand when it comes to renewable energy generation. So we need hydrogen energy to make up for that shortfall. And also, if we are trying to make a transition to a hydrogen society with a less external shock as possible, we need the government's effort in order to buffer the society from these shocks. And the other challenge is usage by, well, power generation, cars, feedstock, and all the other elements that we need to focus on. So the same goes for Japan. They have the same challenges, but one difference is that the share of wind power and solar power is less than in Korea. So they also use brown coal as well in order to gasify it or liquidify it and then transport it with hydrogen carriers. So the major sectors are the same: production, storage, delivery, and usage. These are some policy recommendations, but I'll just skip this part. If we look at the current status of hydrogen economy in Korea, we produce 1.92 million tons, and the production capacity is around 5.4 million tons. And what's noticeable is that the R&D at the moment is focused more on cars, passenger cars, but from now on we will expand into hydrogen buses, fuel cell power stations. We will be expanding the number of it into 47 locations, and there are also drones that we are researching into. The battery types can only last 25 minutes, but in the case of liquid hydrogen, the drones can fly for more than 5 hours. These are some announcements that the Korean government have made until now. So their first goal is to include hydrogen into the third energy basic plan. So my hope is that the third energy basic plan will come out in December this year. So it has to include hydrogen as a major point. And next year we will be hopefully coming up with a roadmap. And my hope that the relevant budget for this is around 100 billion won. So we will be able to conduct more projects, and over the mid to long term, we will try to connect the value chain from production, storage, and usage, and put forth many other projects. So if we look at the implementation plan, the value chain, as I've mentioned, there's production, storage, and usage. So when it comes to production, we need more investment. So we need to use byproduct hydrogen and also reform hydrogen out of other sources. And we should also enhance the plans for storage and delivery and usage. So as for the future direction for Korea's transition to a hydrogen society, we are trying to establish the basic infrastructure by 2025, and by 2030 we're trying to secure a minimal profitability to make sure that after that the industry will be able to stand on its own feet without government subsidies. And the second part of the future direction is that we have divided these stages into production, storage, delivery, supply, and usage. So if you look at the figures, although we may have to adjust them depending on how the plan progresses, we will although the plan currently says that we will roll out more than 550,000 cars, that figure may increase. So keep an eye on the newest figures. And the important thing is that we need to provide a new growth momentum for the energy industry, which can be hydrogen. This is the initiative for Korea's hydrogen economy by 2030. There are two approaches, the institutional approach and the value chain approach. When it comes to institution, as I mentioned, we have to include hydrogen into the third energy basic plan, and we need a comprehensive plan also. And someone has to hold the responsibility. We need a responsible body for these programs, and we need to solve the problem of the price, because currently a lot of use is made out of byproduct hydrogen. So the transport price or the safety management costs is paid up front, and the initial cost is very high. And many people are aware of the risk of hydrogen and the use of hydrogen. So we should do something about this risk and the cost of safety management. That's why many bills are being proposed at the National Assembly. As for the value chain-based approach, there are 4 steps: production, storage, delivery, and usage. So we have short-term and mid to long-term plans to ultimately enable a transition to a hydrogen society. And we should focus not only on usage, but on power generation as well. I think I have now been speaking for more than 20 minutes, but I'll move on to the conclusion. I put a lot of thought into the presentation, as a matter of fact, and I think over the short term, the government needs a enforceable roadmap. And I think we have already achieved this, because the Ministry of ICT will be publishing a roadmap by December. And the government has to provide more support to distribute the facilities. We are trying to do that currently. And the third point is that the transition, the shift, will be challenging. And once the transition is made, all the other industries, aside from the hydrogen industry, may suffer from a blow. So the government has to make sure that they receive less shock as possible. And establishing the infrastructure cannot be done overnight, so we have to look 10 years, 20 years ahead and conduct many demonstration projects and focus on more R&D for technologies. For instance, Hyundai has the technology for refuel station building, but if we have to rely on other countries for the other technologies, it will be of no use. So we have to make sure that we could domestically come up with these technologies. And another important part is to build social acceptance. We need to build awareness among the general public that hydrogen is not dangerous, and we have already solved most of the safety problems. So we should be able to reassure them, the general public, that they are safe to accept the transition to a hydrogen society. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. I am very sorry that I had to rush you. And I'd like to thank our presentations for being right on time. Dr. An talked about going to Davos and participating in the Hydrogen Council. He encapsulated everything in very clear slides, and he talked about the current status of hydrogen policies in Korea. So I don't have much to add, and I would just like to give a big round of applause to Dr. An for his excellent speech. So we have 25 minutes left. If you have any questions right now, if you could write them down and give them to me in advance, that will be very helpful in keeping the Q&A sessions short. Our session was originally 1 hour and a half, and I tried to shorten it to 1 hour, and I think we may end up having a shorter session, which is very worrisome. Well, for now, we will move on to the third presentation, Professor Lee Eun-woong.
Yes, he will talk on the topic of the role of the regional university and the hydrogen economic ecosystem in Chungnam. And he was very much involved in the actual implementation of the related infrastructure in the Chungcheongnam-do province. And he's also worked as a professor at the Korea University of Technology and Education. So we have currently heard about the situation in Japan and the world and the Korea, and now we will learn more about the situation of Chungcheongnam-do province. And please save some time for me so that we can have lunch with some peace of mind. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Lee Yoon-eun. I am a professor at the Korea University of Technology and Education. So, yes, we have this tradition of me having to spend the least amount of time and I've had a similar experience in the first and second International Hydrogen Energy Forum, and this fate is with me on this third forum as well. Well, I'll try to be brief, and the topic is the role of the regional university and the hydrogen economic ecosystem in Chungnam. And I will give you the background, and we'll just introduce you about the ecosystem to further build and develop the industry and the local education institutions and the research center that we can work together. As you are aware, the global warming and the iceberg is melting and the global ecosystems are completely disrupted. So that is why the Paris Accord and the reduction in the greenhouse gas emission was agreed upon during this Paris Accord. And Korea has agreed to about a 37% reduction from the BAU. So the current government have actually estimated that about 315 million tons of CO2 will be reduced by the year 2030. That will be pretty much in line with the 37% reduction versus BAU. So that is a very aggressive target because several years ago the target was 25.7%, but it was raised to 32.5%. In different departments of the government, they have their own respective plans, and the power plant they will focus on the utilization of the renewable energy and expansion of the LNG development and the closing down of the old dilapidated the power generation system. And in terms of the industry, they will improve the energy utilization system and improve the efficiency and the optimization of the processes and the facilities. And in terms of the transportation, the eco-friendly vehicles will be distributed, and there will be stronger support for the infrastructure. All of these efforts are in place so that we can reduce the CO2 emission and find the more eco-friendly solution to our economy. So basically, we will be transitioning from the carbon-based economy into the hydrogen-based economy. Well, this is a rather busy slide, and here I try to tell you as to how the hydrogen-based economy, those initiatives are being implemented in the leading countries around the world, namely Japan, US, and European countries. In terms of the production and the storage and the supply and delivery and the usage, well, there are some differences in terms of the policy priorities that each countries have on different elements of the hydrogen. Well, in the case of Korea, then we have a plan to reduce the 15% of the energy demand by the year 2035. And the distributed energy or the power generation system that will account for the 15% of the power generation by the year 35. Okay then, with that backdrop, then I will elaborate as to how Chungnam or the Chungcheongnam-do province is preparing for that. So the plan is to nurture the 300,000 prosumers by the year 2030 so that we can revitalize the hydrogen industry in the province and thereby reduce the GHG emission by 30%. And there are some key strategies, and by the year 2030, then the hydrogen production or the quantity of that will be 100% of the hydrogen consumption within the province, and we will manufacture or to produce a CO2-free hydrogen that will account for the 70% of the total production. And we will increase the number of fuel cell vehicles, and the cumulative number of vehicles will be 100,000. There will be increasing amount of charging station or the fueling station. There will be about 100 of those by the year 2030. And to realize those strategy, we have actually identified 14 different action plans. So these are the market trend for the fuel cell EV. So everyone on the earth agrees that the market size or the market share will increase going forward. And the recent McKinsey report said that a larger portion of it will be accounted for by the fuel cell EV. And that is extremely in line with the changing trend in the regulation to have a heavy emphasis on the emission and the CO2. So it is not an option, but it will be a necessity. So let me go over the fuel cell EV infrastructure for the leading countries around the world. So all in all, they are laying out the infrastructures and invest heavily on the technology. And we expect that there will be about 2,000 fueling stations by the year 2025 all across the world. And many fuel cell EV manufacturers or the companies are interested in those front are collaborating with each other to further accelerate these efforts. And let me share with you what are the policies that we have domestically. So of course, there has been many policies that were introduced and announced from 2009 and onwards, and recently, all these related ministries and agencies work together to announce to increase the number of
7개의 완성차 부품 회사들이 있습니다. 요 7개의
kilometers radius, there are seven parts manufacturers. They account for 36% of the domestic manufacturing capacity.
한 3분의 1
That
이상의
means that more than one-third
회사들이 충남 인근에 밀집해 있다고 봐도 되겠습니다.
automotive
충남에는
manufacturers are
72개
located
정도의
in and around and in the vicinity of the province. And we do have 100 industrial complexes. And there are many research institutions, and one of the leading institutions that is located in the Chungcheongnam-do province is the Research Institute for the Automobile Parts. So we do have a leading schools and universities. So we do have all the necessary elements to create a strong ecosystem that focuses on and also specializes on the automobile parts based on the hydrogen economy. So these are some of the technology capabilities that is owned by the businesses that residing in the province.
모듈과 관련된
So we do have the materials and the parts industry that is more to the downstream. And we do have the industrial foundation for the automobile parts and the module industry.
또한
And also we
충남에서는
have the
아까도 많이
upstream
말씀이
presence as
나왔는데
well. We have
퓨즈들이 부품
discussed
시경하는 상태만
in great detail
구축에 대한 예타를
by the earlier
하고 있는데
presentations and the earlier speakers.
연구라 중심의 개발
We
생태계에서
do have the complete
상용화
ecosystem for the
중심의
fuel
고급
cell EV parts
생태계를
R&D
가지기 위한
hub
퓨어셀링의 R&D 허브를 구축하는 데 목표가 있다고
The
보입니다.
target is to establish the R&D hub for the fuel cell EV. So this is something that you might be quite familiar with. So I will skip some of the slides
그래서
and
저는
then move on
이
to
충남의 수소 및
the main
퓨어셀링의
topic,
부품 산업 육성
which is
방안으로 한
that
6
my
가지
proposition
정도를
to
제안을
promote hydrogen and the fuel cell
수소
EV
전기차
part
산업의 그 메카
industry.
충남 건설을 위해서
So for us to make
충남
충청남
북부 지역의 그 완성차와 자동차 부품기업, 연구소, 대학 직접적으로서
then we
수소
could
전기차
actually
부품사를
utilize
클러스터로 활성화를
the
추진해야
location of
되겠다.
benefits where we have a large
또한
industrial complex
자동차
that is
의장
specializing
전장
on
실시,
the
그다음에
automobile
수소
industry
부품에
and the
대해서
educational capability
중국
and the
수출
research
교도부로
capability and
육성해야
the
되겠다.
location of the Chungcheongnam province is very close
두
to
번째로
China.
대산의
So we can actually tap into
석유화학단지를
that capability as well.
중부권
And we
수소
have the
공급의
petrochemical
허브로
complex in
육성을
Busan, and it could also
해야
be used
되겠다.
as a hub
할 필요가 충분히 있다. 라는 이제
the
이렇게 생각을
hydrogen
합니다.
supply in the middle part
세
of the
번째로
country.
서해안 그
Thirdly,
화력발전소
there
지역을
are
대비 환경
power generation
클린화를 추진할
facilities
필요성이
in
있다.
the west coast of the
그리고
peninsula,
또한
and that needs
지속적으로
to be
노력을 해야
further
되겠다.
improved to be more
말씀을
eco-friendly, environment friendly.
또한 대전 천안을 중심으로 한 퓨어셀링의
Centered
연구의
around the
산업
Daejeon and
기반을
Cheonan
이
cities,
서해안 쪽으로
the
좀 이렇게
fuel cell
확산할 필요가
EV
있다.
research
하는
and the
그런
industrial base
말씀을
should
드립니다.
be more expanded towards the west side
그리고 그
of
수소
those two
유통과
cities.
퓨어셀링을 연계해서
Distribution of the
서해안
hydrogen and the fuel cell
고속도로를
EV needs to be
수소
strengthened.
하이웨이로
And there
이렇게
is a major
구축을 하는
highway
노력이
that runs
필요하며
across the
충남에서는
province, and we
먼저
need to have a
이것을
stronger
실행해야 할 것이라고
infrastructure
이렇게
on and
생각을 하고
around
있습니다.
Seohaehan highway so that we can
마지막으로
actually
충남의
start
남부
the
및 대전
commercialization
지역의
efforts
수소 공급망 및
of the
공급
fuel cell
기술
EV.
구축을
And
하는 것이
then in
필요하다.
the Daejeon area and the southern Chungcheongnam province, that we can expand the distribution network,
예, 다음은
distribution station.
충남 수도경제 활성화를 위해서 그럼 대학들이 어떠한 역할을 좀 해야 될 것인가에 대해서 생각을 해봤습니다. 현재 교육부에서는
So the Ministry of Education actually promotes the autonomous administration of each universities and thereby increase their competitiveness. So that means that each university, for the sustainable development and advancement, that they need to establish the mid to long-term development plan and strategy. As the leading industry of Chungcheongnam province is, there are many of them, but one of them is the parts for the eco-friendly vehicle, and also the hydrogen is one of the three key investment area that has been designated by the central government. And as you can see from this International Hydrogen Energy Forum, that the Chungcheongnam-do province has been very active in its investment and the support for the hydrogen industry. So let me share with you some of the information, the comparison that I've made. And also the analysis. The number of universities in Sejong and Chungcheongnam-do province that has the departments that's specialized in the automobiles and the related industries. Well, the national average is 10.6%. And in case of our province, and what will be the ratio? Because we are currently spearheading these efforts, then what is the current status of the university that is within the province? Maybe there are further room for us to strengthen the collaboration between the universities in the provinces and the businesses that resides in the province. And this is also the universities should step up their efforts to find creative solutions to the pending issues of their provinces and to create outcome and results, then the universities should play a bigger role and have a stronger collaboration and a coalition with the local research institutions so that we can play a bigger role in the overall processes. And what we can do is to provide the support for the industries that is more customized to the unique needs of each industry and the company. And universities are mostly focused on the base science and the fundamental science, and this is where we can provide these unique benefits to. Well, of course, the central government have this roadmap for the key technological advancement that we could actually develop our own that is pretty much in line with the government roadmap. To realize the hydrogen economy ecosystem in the Chungcheongnam province, and to realize that there are some challenges for the local universities to overcome. That is to strengthen the capability, such as the laying foundation for research and development for the hydrogen-related research area. And of course, the university should play a bigger role in giving back to the community. And it will play a very important role in nurturing the local talents that will benefit the local businesses. And businesses and universities and the local provinces can create the unique relations that will be mutually beneficial in pursuit of the mutual prosperity, so that local universities can contribute for the province to reach its target of achieving a hydrogen-based economic ecosystem. So thank you very much for keeping the time.
Your question. I'm not sure.
But my question is that, what is your idea to buy a fuel cell passenger car in your cases? You have idea to buy a fuel cell passenger car? This is my first question. And in addition, what is the general customers' idea about the fuel cell electric vehicle in Japan, Japanese customer? It's very simple.
Well, the first question is the FCV. From my understanding, that is eternal, what do you call that? Eternal clean energy automobile. So personally, I don't have now, but I like to buy in the near future. And for the Japanese people, FCV is not so. FC and hydrogen. Now I think educated quite into the pre-people. So I think it's the hydrogen society in Japan will be coming very soon. Thank you.
오케이. 예, 시간이 남지 않아가지고 이 질문 중에서 한 분이 7가지 질문을 하셨는데 질문이 다 안 된 거는 우리 오사무.
For those questions that you didn't have answered, you should probably send an email to Mr. Miyashita and have your question answered. And I'll just have one question asked. We talked about the risk of hydrogen, the danger. What should we do? Is there a way to change the general perception about the fact that hydrogen is dangerous? Well, I mentioned at the last part that it is very important to build social trust or acceptance. So the government needs to promote the fact that hydrogen is, as a matter of fact, not dangerous. We are doing TV ads and are doing many promotional events. Well, I sometimes, when I do lectures, I ask my questions. What first comes to mind when you think about hydrogen? And most of them answer hydrogen bombs. But hydrogen bombs are not hydrogen. They are combinations of other hydrogen elements. So realistically, hydrogen in and of itself is not dangerous. And another fact is that we need to advertise the fact that it is actually safe, to show the people what happens when the hydrogen tank explodes. And the most important thing is that the government makes efforts so that the people can more easily embrace hydrogen as a new form of energy. And last but not least, I'll just wrap up with my personal comment. Hydrogen society or hydrogen economy are a theme that has been discussed in Chungcheongnam-do for a long time, which is the very reason, proof that it will be upcoming in the near future. And the government and many local governments and other countries around the world are highly interested in hydrogen technologies. We are having this International Energy Forum today because we should play a leading role, a trailblazer's role in bringing about a hydrogen economy, and that Chungcheongnam-do should become a focal point in these efforts, in using hydrogen cars and hydrogen technologies, and in resolving technical problems, and should be the outpost of data collection and other efforts. So in that spirit, we are holding today's forum, and I would like to wrap up the special session with that. And we have 2 more sessions waiting for us in the afternoon, so I hope you enjoy lunch, and we have a more active discussion in the afternoon sessions. So I'm very sorry for being behind schedule. I apologize for not being able to take more questions, so the special session will now be closed. Let's give a big round of applause to our brilliant speakers. Let's give a big round of applause for the moderator and our 3 presenters. We will resume in 1 hour at 1:30. We have lunch boxes prepared for you at the lobby. So if you bring us the coupon, a voucher that you have at the back of your name tag, we will give you the lunch box. And if you require any emergency treatment in any form, we have the emergency ambulance waiting for you. And we also have medicine prepared as well. So if you have an emergency, please contact our staff members. So I will see you again in 1 hour at 1:30.